Greetings. I am Brett Walter, founder and CEO of Climate Action Now. We are here tonight because we share an understanding that the election of Donald Trump would be a disaster for our climate and our democracy. And we want to do everything we can in our power to prevent it. The question is what to do. How do we use our limited time and money to maximum effect? To answer that question, Climate Action Now has organized this series of How We Win events, in which our questions can be answered by experts of the US political system and leaders of organizations like the ones you'll meet tonight that are working to get out the vote in crucial swing state and congressional districts. We've already had 3 very informative How We Win events and are putting links to those recordings in the chat right now. I guarantee if you watch them, you'll come away knowing much, much more than you currently know about how to give your time and money wisely. I'd like to thank Dr. Marianne Krasny of Cornell University for proposing this series and using her influence to assemble our speakers. I'd like to thank Liz Bridgewater, Climate Action Now's Director of Outreach, for producing the series. Thanks to our moderator, the inestimable Jessica Craven, author of the hugely popular Chopwood Carry Water Substack. Let's put a link to that in the chat, please, Liz. And an ardent champion for climate and progressive causes. Thanks to Robert Hubble, author of today's edition, Substack, for helping promote this event. Thanks also to our speakers tonight, Andrea Miller, Ariel Volk, and Lakiesha Lloyd, for their valuable time and insights, and especially for their wonderful work getting out the vote. And most of all, thank you for showing up when the showing up most matters. It is your passion, your commitment, and your love of our country that is the ultimate answer to the question of how we win this November. Thank you for coming. So let's get down to business and win this election, shall we? Over to you, Jessica.
Well, thank you very much, Brett. Hi, everybody. Jessica Craven. I'm going to be a very brief presence here. I'm just going to talk for 1 second and then turn you over to these incredible speakers that we have today. I am so excited. These are some of my favorite organizations that we have represented today, organizations that are really making profound differences in whether we win or lose races. They are speaking to very specific segments of our population that we absolutely need to be speaking to. And in some cases, they are the only organizations doing that work. In most cases, maybe all cases. So really exciting. And I just also want to put in my plug that I do every time, that if you do not have the Climate Action Now app, which we're not talking about here today, but as a hardcore environmental activist, I'm going to beg you to get that app and use it. It is extraordinarily well done, well curated, and effective. So you can just look it up on the App Store and make sure you get it. It is amazing. And now we are going to start with our 3 fantastic speakers. I'm going to introduce them one at a time. And I'm just going to start by saying that our first speaker has to leave a little early. So usually we would tell you to put your questions in the chat for all 3 speakers, and we will address them all at the end. But because Lakiesha cannot stay the whole time, this first speaker, Lakiesha Lloyd, who I'm going to introduce in a second, if you have questions for her, please drop them in the chat as she speaks, and she can try to take at least 1 or 2 before she goes. And so we're going to start with Lakiesha Lloyd from Common Defense. And Lakiesha is the Deputy Climate Justice Director for Common Defense. She is a disabled Army veteran who served from 2001 to 2010. Lakiesha manages the Common Defense Climate Justice Program. The climate program is centered on the idea that true national security includes protecting communities from the threats posed by climate change. Hear, hear. And Common Defense is the nation's largest grassroots organization of U.S. military veterans, and the only one that invests in the leadership of its members through training and deployment in campaigns that connect directly to their history of service, including voting rights, climate justice, and anti-militarism. So let's hear it for Lakiesha, and I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for that introduction. And I'm just super excited to be able to be here with you all tonight. My name is Lakiesha Lloyd. I live in Spring, Texas. I'm a native Texan, born and raised in Fort Worth. U.S. Army veteran and the Deputy Climate Justice Director at Common Defense. As Common Defense, we are a grassroots organization of veterans who have served our country and are now committed to defending our democracy at home. We believe that veterans have a unique responsibility and a powerful voice in shaping the future of our nation. Common Defense has been driven to answer the call, to fight for the future of our democracy, and to honor the oath that we took to defend our country and our Constitution against any who threatens our democracy, both foreign and domestic. So I'd like to start off by sharing a bit about why I'm here tonight and why this work means so much to me. As veterans, we know that our service didn't end when we took off the uniform. We know that the values that we fought for, freedom, justice, and equality, remain at the core of who we are. And it's those same values that guide our work at Common Defense. We believe in a country that honors its commitments, not just to those who have served, but to all its citizens. That's why we're here tackling the climate issues that affect veterans and their communities the most, using solution-based organizing to help communities of color and low-income communities to get into the renewable energy workforce, that we focus on infrastructure and the health of these communities that are surrounded by LNG terminals that we see in the pipelines, and other environmental justice issues. Connecting communities to organizations and programs to help them have solar and microgrid technology. How we move forward in tackling climate issues at home is dually based on our elections. Ensuring that we do all we can to help educate our communities in the voting process, fighting against misinformation, and working against legislation that suppresses the vote. It's important why that we're highlighting this information in communities and showing the connection of how this works in their everyday lives, the why you need to vote, because this is how you and your community are personally on the ground level going to be affected by these policies. So one way that you can help us in all of these, all of this work is, of course, by donating. It takes a lot to ensure that we're being able to be on the ground working directly with these communities. To kind of give you all an example of this, we are currently right now, we have a membership in Texas. Because we are a member-led organization and we invest in the leadership of our members, we actually have a state organizing committee here in the state that is made up of veterans throughout the entire state. And we just came back from San Antonio, Texas, this past weekend, where we gathered these veterans together for a conference, and we did some training, right? We gave them some training, some communication training, tactics training, strategizing training. And then we brought them together and allowed them to take everything that we talked about this weekend and put it into action. So what came of that? We are actually in the process of hosting a Get Out to Vote event in Harris County, Texas, one of the hardest hit counties when it comes to what the Texas legislation has tried to do to hinder and suppress the vote here in Harris County, because they understand one thing, that if Harris County gets any more purple out in our suburbs and rural areas in Harris County, it's going to flip Texas, and they can't have that. So what is one of the things that we're going to do? Well, we're going to be hosting a block walk. The goal is to have 50 veterans throughout the state of Texas converge on the 3rd Ward of Houston, home of Texas Southern University, where back in 2022, the early voting was such that that was the only place to be able to early vote. And there was other areas that was there to early vote, but the restrictions to getting to these poll places was insane. It ended up to where TSU on election day, the lines were so long that people were trying to get in to vote, that many who had stood in line for hours eventually gave up and turned around and went home and didn't get to pass their ballot that day. So we are going to, voter registration in the state of Texas ends on October 7th. Well, we are going to be in that community on the 4th, ensuring that folks have that education, understand what it means to vote, understanding that it's not just the federal elections that count, right? It's the local elections, it's your state elections, it's the midterm elections, helping bring folks out to say, what is the issues? What issues are you facing in your community that's hindering you from getting out to vote? With the goal being that we see an increase of voter turnout in this community that has suffered so much from these policies that's been implemented. So that is what we're hoping to do. I really appreciate you all for your time. And I'm willing to take any questions if anyone has any.
Great. Well, I'll jump in with a question, Lakeisha, while folks are gathering their thoughts. Are you working just in that one district, or other states, or other places in Texas?
Yes, so we're actually working in our key states, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Arizona, and also here in the state of Texas. We are gathering our members. We have organizers in each state that are gathering members to help get out the vote in their respective states and areas. Here in Texas, where I'm based out of, I have a city plan. Every major city in the state of Texas, we have membership in. So we are actually, for this upcoming event that I just spoke of, we're having a sister event the same weekend in Dallas. And so we're building up San Antonio, Austin, the Rio Grande Valley, West Texas, out towards El Paso. You name it, we are locked in this state, and we're replicating this all throughout the country where we have major membership in.
So that was someone's question. Do you work on the national level? But sounds like you do.
Yes, we do. So Common Defense happens to be a 501c3, a 501c4, and a PAC. So we're able to endorse candidates, which is one of the things that we've been doing. We've here in the state of Texas, we have endorsed Colin Allred for the Senate race. We have it's Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, just all of the powerhouses that we have out here. And for the first time this year, we've actually done some down ballot endorsements as well. So it's just a real opportunity for us to get in all of the areas, and it's such exciting work.
So one more quick question, and I was going to ask the same thing. Do you think Colin Allred has a chance to win the Senate seat?
I do. I really do. And listen, I'm not just like a naive optimistic, okay? This is a tough race. It's a tough race. So many have came close, to taking Ted out, but this is the closest, where they are essentially tied right now in the state of Texas. And so we're doing everything that we can to help push Colin across the finish line here.
So that's so amazing. I don't know. Do we have time for another one, Brett, or should we keep going?
Yeah, let's see, where are we? It's 4:16. Yeah, let's just take one more question.
Okay. Let's see. How long has your group existed, and have you worked in previous elections?
Yes. So Common Defense first started off as Vets versus Hate in 2016 with the rise of Trump. You may have heard about Trump railing about some veterans who was out in front of Trump Tower causing a little bit of trouble. That was the beginning of Common Defense. We officially became Common Defense in 2018. So there was some work around the 2020 election. This is my first election with the organization. I came on in 2021. Well, no, I did midterms. I did the midterms elections, but this is my first general with this organization. But I will tell you, we've got a great plan in action, and where they've done this before. I mean, it's amazing doing this work with them for sure.
Well, thank you so much, Lakeisha. And I think I speak for everybody. Our gratitude to you for the incredible work you're doing. It's essential work. And go flip Texas, please.
That's the goal.
Flip, flip Texas. Yeah,
Kamala is 4 points behind in the state of Texas. We are within the margin of error in the state of Texas. It's the closest race that the
that
state
is
has been
something.
in a long time.
Well, thank you so much for your time and for coming share. And dig in your pockets, folks, and give to common defense. Let's go get Texas.
All right, let's thank you, Lakeisha. Goodbye. And we're going to go on to our next speaker. I am very excited about this. I have been a huge fan of this group for such a long time. I am proud to say that I have been on the Galvanize bandwagon for almost, I think, since they started. So we are going to hear from Ariel Volk of Galvanize Action. So I'll tell you first who Ariel is, and then I'll tell you who Galvanize is. Ariel is the Strategic Initiatives Director at Galvanize Action. She has over a decade of experience in public policy, communications, government relations, and foreign affairs. Her work has focused on building coalitions to advance a range of issues, including access to reproductive health care, immigration reform, religious freedom, and U.S. funding for the UN. And Galvanize Action connects with moderate women in rural, small town, and suburban communities to build an America that works for everyone, working at the intersection of data science, behavioral psychology, and neuroscience. Galvanize Action finds women who want progress on key issues, but aren't reliably playing a role to get us there, connects with them on their values, and impacts their civic behavior. I cannot wait to hear from Ariel, and let's turn it over to her right now.
Thank you so much, Jessica. What an introduction. I am going to share my screen. Alrighty. Okay, so hopefully that is working for everyone. So again, thank you so much for having me. It's really, really great to be here in community with all of you. I'm Ariel Volk, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives at Galvanize Action and the One for All Committee, which is our founders' Unconnected PAC, and I'm based in Columbus, Ohio. So today I'm going to share a little bit about our hot off the press research findings about the attitudes and the beliefs that are most likely to predict how moderate white women are going to vote in November, and also to explain why it is so important that we reach this very critical voting block. So a little bit about us. Galvanize Action was founded in the wake of the 2016 election to address the rise of authoritarianism and toxic polarization that we saw in the country, and really to fill this gap that we also saw when it came to reaching moderate white women. So over the past 6 years, we've developed a proven and an effective approach to find these women, connect with them, and then move them in rural, small town, and suburban America. And we do this first by conducting research to really deeply understand the values and what is driving their vote. Second, to meet them at those values with our ads and our messages that are rooted in neuropsychology. And then third, to deliver the right message to the right woman through our micro-targeting. So you might be wondering, okay, but why white women? The reason for this is because they are actually the largest voting bloc in the country, and they have significant influence in the states that are going to control the outcome of this election. So they hold 38% of the national vote share, and even more, 42% and above in the states where we root our work. So that's in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. We exist because white women are key to advancing and sustaining a multiracial coalition for progress, but we know they are just one slice of the pie. So we really see ourselves as a complement to our progressive allies. Our strategy is rooted in prioritizing regions where there are high concentrations of moderate white women and where we believe we can have the biggest pro-social impact with our unique programming. So that's why the One for All Committee is investing most of its efforts in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania for the presidential and the Senate races this year. However, we know we can also reach really high concentrations of our audience in other states as well, which is why we've expanded into new geographies this year in order to scale our impact. impact. So we're positioned to connect with moderate women to strengthen support on reproductive freedom, the economy, democracy, and culture wars across 11 states this year, where over 13 million target audience members reside. And we're connecting with them in a few different ways. So we are running an 8-month digital broadcast campaign that's aimed at moving these moderate white women on key issues and their vote choice. So Galvanize Action has a nonpartisan affiliate called Galvanize USA. That's our 501c3. Galvanize USA was in the field from May through June with our issue education ads. We ran 5 ads during that time focused on care economy, repro, and gender equity. And the goal of those ads was really to connect with our audience early on the issues that we know are most important to them leading up to the election. And then Galvanize Action, which is the 501c4, has a digital persuasion ad campaign that is currently live and will be through Election Day. We're in 8 states with 7 democracy, economy, repro, and immigration ads. And the purpose of those ads is really to take things a little bit further and to connect with our audience on their values and on their political behavior on these key issues. And then the One for All committee is also now live in 8 states with 5 pro-Harris and pro-Democratic Senate ads, and we're reaching more than 3 million moderate white women voters through the One for All committee. And then the goal of those ads is really to shift moderate white women to vote for Harris and key Senate races in November. So we tailor and we micro-target these ads to our audience. We use multiple platforms, which really allows us to saturate our audience with our programming in a highly cost-efficient way. And so by using media and consumer data to really see where our audience is spending their time, so what shows they're watching, what social media they're into, we know where to place our ads. So our ads will pop up between episodes of their favorite shows on streaming sites and smart TVs, on their social media, so Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat, and then before their online content plays. And then within all of this, we're also conducting a ton of research. So we've embedded 3 randomized control trials to evaluate our digital ad program and moving these women over time and to really gain a clearer understanding of where our audience is sitting with these issues throughout the year. And we're conducting ad hoc and quarterly audience understanding surveys that'll help us really gauge where our audience is following key events, such as presidential debates like yesterday, and after Biden dropped out. So I'm going to share a little bit about what our research is telling us about moderate white women as we approach Election Day. So we know the stakes truly could not be higher this year, and all of the data is really pointing to a close race with those undecided folks in the middle playing a key role in determining the fate of this election. So we conducted a survey in late July, and that showed that 31% of moderate white women had not yet committed on a decision about who they're going to vote for in the presidential election. However, in survey results we got back just this week, so very hot off the press, 23% said they had not yet committed on a decision. So this suggests that the percentage of moderate white women who have not yet made a decision to vote is shrinking, which also highlights the shrinking window that we have to influence this audience. We also know that there's still work to be done to strengthen support for Kamala Harris amongst moderate white women. In a survey that we conducted in August, we found that moderate white women are leaning 43.5% for Trump and 42.6% for Harris. So that's a difference of just 0.9%. So what we see is that Trump and Harris really are neck and neck among moderate white women. And we have yet to see how last night's debate and Taylor Swift's endorsement impacts support for Harris amongst moderate white women, but our future surveys will be able to shed some light on that. So we do know a bit about how moderate white women view Kamala Harris. 10 days before President Biden announced he was stepping out, Galvanize Action had asked our audience to describe their feelings about Biden, Trump, and Harris, and we provided them with a list of words. For Trump, all but one of the top 5 words expressed were negative feelings. So disgusted, nervous, angry were the words that popped out. For Harris, though, 36% of non-Trump voting moderate white women, they did say they felt nervous, but they also used positive words like happy, excited, and proud. And this was in sharp contrast to Biden, for whom there were no positive feelings that broke the top 5, which our research is really showing moderate white women prefer Harris to Biden. And what we know is that moderate white women are not single issue voters, so our effective engagement really needs to address the wide range of issues that they most care about. Our recent survey shows that economy remains the top issue that's going to influence their vote choice. So that's putting food on the table, gas money, rising healthcare costs, and then we're looking at democracy, immigration, and abortion. Unfortunately, white women perceive that Trump is better able to handle the economy and immigration issues, but unsurprisingly, Harris is perceived as better able to handle abortion issues. So our messaging strategy varies across all of these issues, and I could spend an entire session just talking about that alone. But I did want to take one moment just to talk about moderate white women's views on the climate. So while we know that the majority of women in our audience, they value environmentalism, this often translates as individual respect and love for nature, and it's not necessarily connected to climate change. So many voters in our audience feel overwhelmed, simply just not swayed by talking about climate as a systemic problem. So one effective inroad when discussing climate with moderate white women is really to look at it from an economic angle. So looking at, having to replace your roof after a hailstorm, moving to electric vehicles over gas guzzling vehicles, that and talking about the impact that it has on future generations. Those have been some of our biggest inroads. And our audience is never going to list climate change as a top 10 issue for them, which is why we've not focused on this as a standalone issue this year. But what we know is that it is part of the package deal. So if we can get these women to vote for the candidate for progress, we know that they will vote for measures to protect the environment as well. So before I wrap up, I did want to show one of our pro-Harris ads. It's called Together. And this ad features May. She's an original Rosie the Riveter from Pennsylvania. And you'll see that this ad really invokes patriotism and nostalgia in order to highlight what's at stake and to really empower voters to choose the right side of history.
I remember the way we stepped up. Women from all walks of life. Those days were dark, but working together, they didn't seem so bad. We each do what we can. Roll up your sleeves and get to work. That's just the way America is. Kamala Harris embodies that American spirit, that we don't have to go it alone, that all of us together, we can build great things.
I just love that ad so much. Okay. So in closing, I just want to reiterate that white women are a critical voting bloc that we really must win, must reach in order to win the election this year. And we know at Galvanize that our unique approach works, and we're really grateful to all the supporters who continue to make it possible for us to reach more of these women in more states. So there are a number of ways to support and get involved. First and foremost is, of course, through donations. So we're still trying to fill some funding gaps to sustain our programming through Election Day. We also provide all of our ads, our messaging, and our research to our allies in kind, so at no charge. So if you're ever interested in using any of our ads in your work, you can contact us and we'll make sure that that contact information gets shared with you. We also post everything in our Art and Science of Persuasion playbook, so we can link that as well to access all of our messaging. And then finally, our executive director, Jackie Payne, and special guest, Celinda Lake, who is a renowned political strategist and a Democratic pollster. They're going to be hosting 2 briefings this month. And that's really going to dig into more of the national polling and some of our pulse check surveys. And the first one is tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, and the second one is September 26th at 8 p.m. So we can share that information as well. And then lastly, talk to your friends and family. I know for me, so much of the work that we are doing, it resonates with me personally and talking to members of my family about these issues. So I think that is also just always a way to get involved and help make a difference. Thank you so much for having me, and happy to take questions.
Okay, I think we're going to do questions at the end, Ariel. That's usually what we do, right?
Perfect.
Okay, so we will do that. Oh, so fantastic. That was absolutely incredible. That ad almost made me cry, and it's like 15 seconds long. Okay, why am I echoing? All right, well, hopefully that will stop. So, all right, that was amazing. Our next speaker is someone who I am a huge fan of, and her organization as well. This is just an incredible opportunity to get to hear Andrea. So Andrea Miller is the founding board member of the Center for Common Ground. She is the executive director of People Demanding Action and founding president of the National Women's Political Caucus of Virginia. Andrea is an IT and political director and a digital and election strategist. She designs and administers digital phone banks and texting programs. In 2008, she was the Democratic nominee for the Virginia 4th Congressional District. And the Center for Common Ground is a wonderful, nonpartisan, Black and women-led voting rights organization that works to educate and empower voters of color in voter suppression states, including Texas, by the way, because we just had some of their postcards here. The Center for Common Ground works in voter suppression states where more than 20% of voters are voters of color: Alabama, Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and, as I said, Texas. So this should be a real treat. I cannot wait to hear from her, and I'm going to turn it over to the wonderful Andrea Miller.
All right. Thank you so much, Jessica. I too brought a presentation tonight because I love for people to be able to see all the possibilities that exist in this election. So I am just thrilled to be here and to talk about what we do. Now, Center for Common Ground, we do have an internship program, and people who know us normally know our Reclaim Our Vote campaign, which got started back in 2017. We have a very simple strategic mission. We educate and empower underrepresented voters, think voters who look like me, in voter suppression states to not only engage in elections, but after the election is over, we work year round to advocate for their right to vote. So many of the states where we work, we saw really tremendous voter suppression legislation introduced. And a number of our folks were involved in some of those lawsuits. So together, we can build a democracy that prioritizes the voices of all people. And my father was from Mississippi, and one of the sayings they have in Mississippi is, all means all, y'all. Now, what do? Well, back in 2020, we had 44,000 volunteers. Because we do all of our work as a 501c3, we are faith organization friendly. So in 2020, we contacted 14 million voters, sent 9.4 million postcards. Those are postcards that you see in that stack. 2.9 million text messages, and made 1.7 million phone calls. That was then. It's now 4 years later. We now have 85,000 volunteers. So our goal this year is to do outreach to 18 million people, with roughly 12.5 million by postcard, 3.5 million by text messages, and 2.5 million by phone call. We buy and have the best data that is available. Now, we work in the following states: Virginia, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, Texas, Alabama, and we also have a democracy center in South Carolina. So we work in the Black Belt of South Carolina. And again, what we have seen is that every southern state has a Black Belt. This is where the plantations were. Well, not all Black people moved to Chicago and New York when slavery was over. A lot of people decided the devil that you know is better than the devil that you don't know. So they stayed right where they were. Now, a lot of those folks that moved north and maybe west in the 60s and 70s are going back home. So the numbers of registered Black voters in those states is huge. We send a lot of postcards. I'm going to deal with the bottom line. As of last week, we distributed 191,000 addresses to Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Texas, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Alabama. And in a moment, I am going to tell you why those states are all important. But I'm going to take a moment and show you some lovely things and some fun things. We introduced private label postcards in 2023. In last month, we had a formal partnership with the James Brown estate, and we were able to produce the Godfather of Soul postcard. Now, most people, if you remember James Brown, you think of him as this incredible music artist. He was. He was born in South Carolina. He lived a big part of his adult life in Georgia, and he was a huge, absolutely huge civil rights leader and advocate for voting rights. We also updated one of our original postcards, Vote Your Power, and we wanted to show more than hands. So in our postcards are now art. We developed the new Vote Your Power, and we contracted with the artist Amir Kadar. One of our donors, who happened to be 85 years old, asked the question, do you send these postcards only to older voters, or do you also send them to younger voters? And we were like, yeah, we send them to younger voters. She said, well, then I think you should have a Vote Your Future card. And so now there's the set, Vote Your Power, Vote Your Future. We still have addresses that are available. As a matter of fact, our data wranglers, they call themselves, said they would really like it if they could get another 500,000 Texas addresses. So I will be sending those over tomorrow. And then I thought this picture was so fun. One of the really exciting things in 2024 is that Black voters in our focus states are taking on the task of writing these postcards. And it's not just our volunteers in California and Illinois and Midtown Manhattan. So we have a picture of 150,000 private label postcards on their way from our print shop to our organizer in Georgia, who will be distributing these postcards to members of the Divine Nine, the Black Georgia, well, the Black fraternities and sororities. So I love that. So anyway, who are we writing to? In Florida, we're writing to 1 million Black women. In Arizona, they have a very small Black population, only 54,000. Georgia, it is 1.1 million voters. We originally did 600,000. I had to send them another 500,000. Texas, we started 300,000. They're gone. So I'm spending another 500,000. North Carolina, 900,000. So as you can see, these numbers are really, really big for a lot of Black voters. Our postcard may be the only contact they get. Why? Because in most states, Black voters, often because of age, because of poverty, because of lack of transportation, they are inconsistent voters. And what we are seeing in 2024 is that the main outreach that candidates and the party is doing is to consistent voters. And we know what an opportunity our inconsistent but already registered voters can provide. So we are very, very targeted in the areas where we're working. We are looking to impact congressional races, and in many states where there are state Senate and state House races, we will also be impacting those as well. I got a letter the other day with someone saying, why are we wasting our time writing to voters in Alabama? And that is because in October of 2023, Alabama filed a lawsuit against the Secretary of State saying that the representation was not fair in terms of the voting districts, and they got a new majority minority district. Congressional District 2 is that new majority minority district, and this will be the first election run in that district. Well, one of the things that hopefully we all know about politics is that if everybody does the work and we do elect the Harris-Walz ticket, if we don't have a Congress willing to support those ideals, then a lot of the things they are hoping to do will not be able to happen. And we see CD2 as one more seat. Now, we've got a lot of experience working in Alabama. We did the special election in December of 2017. So we have won in Alabama, and we won in a lot of those counties that are now in this new district. This is going to go by very, very quickly to just give you a feeling. I am a numbers girl, all right? To give you a feeling of the population, the possibilities that exist in these states. Georgia has 2.5 million registered Black voters. If you were wondering why Georgia is up to tricks, laws, and every manner of chicanery you can imagine, it is because 34% of the registered voters in Georgia are Black. They are terrified. When we look at North Carolina, it's 1.5 million, only 21% of the population, but they're in Charlotte, Greensboro, Raleigh, Durham. So that is going to have an impact statewide and literally down the ballot. When we look at South Carolina, hey, all their votes count, and we are working predominantly in the South Carolina Black Belt, where there are state seats that potentially we can make a difference. In Virginia, I live in Virginia. We have a Senate race, and we have 2 U.S. House races where the incumbent chose not to run again. And I already talked about Alabama. So from Montgomery to Mobile, is the new district. The old black belt, the other black belt, stretches from Montgomery and heads due west and runs right through Selma. And then we are looking at Florida. Florida has abortion on the ballot, women. Florida also has legalization of marijuana on the ballot. And if a great candidate and Rick Scott is horribly unpopular, this may be the combination where we can actually do something in Florida. And Texas, 1.3 million Black voters. Now, it's true, it's only 7.78% of the population, but we are partnered with Hispanic groups in Florida, and they've got 5 million voters. So I really and truly believe there is a major possibility in Texas. And I want you to look at the number of white voters, slightly more than 50%. That means that there's 49% of the voters in Texas, registered voters, who are of color. And we normally believe if we can go into a state where 20% of the population is of color, we can potentially win in that state. All right. I want to show you one last thing about the way we do canvassing, and then we can take questions. When we put together our canvassing material, we understand that rural is our superpower. Many of the voters do not have internet. Some do. Many of the voters do not know where to go to get information on where to vote. So when we go to the door with these cards, we work with voters on where can they early vote. This is Mecklenburg, North Carolina. It's got a younger population than Mecklenburg, Virginia. Mecklenburg, Virginia, we don't give them QR codes. We actually put the phone number of the registrar, and we actually write the address of where they go and vote. So we look at what's the average age of the population, and will they really be able to work with this information? We remind people of why they're voting. And notice the number one issue is economic security and good paying jobs. Black voters and white women voters have a lot in common when we look at their number one issue. And then we tell them how to find out who and what is on their ballot. And again, when they're rural communities and they're low income, we have a special app where they can answer 20 questions. And if they are entitled to federal, state, or local benefits, it will tell them and give them the approximate dollar amount where they could potentially increase their household income. So I'm going to stop there. And hopefully that has given you an idea of what we do at Center for Common Ground.
Oh, amazing as always. Sorry about that. I had my camera off for a second. That was incredible, Andrea. Oh, you're so inspiring. Everybody's so inspiring. What a great group. Okay, so we have not a lot of time. Let me plow through some questions. Let's see. We will go back to Ariel first, and then we'll come back to Andrea, and I'll try to bounce back and forth. Ariel, how do white women view abortion when it comes to vote choice, and how are you messaging on this issue?
Yes, abortion, a hot topic. So when we are examining our audience, abortion consistently ranks as one of the top issues that's influencing their presidential vote choice, but the economy continues to dominate as their leading issue. So with potentially over a dozen abortion measures on the ballot this November, we're anticipating we might see some split ticket voting where some women might support Trump at the top of the ticket while also voting in favor of reproductive rights. So we are often asking our audience about their views of abortion. In February, 75% of moderate white women said that abortion is a consideration for them when they cast their vote, but only 25% of them said that they would vote solely on abortion. But we actually just got results last week that found that now 27% of moderate white women said that they would only vote for a candidate who shares their views on abortion. So that means it has increased from 25% to 27%. So while we can't yet equate that to meaningful change, we do see an indication that this is becoming a greater issue amongst our audience and informing their vote choice. I'll just very quickly talk about the messaging. I think because this isn't their top issue for our audience, one of our primary goals is really to make it salient for them, to make it clear that the government does have a role and that their role is to safeguard reproductive rights. And so we're trying to get them to support federal protections of abortion and reproductive health care. And also just how important it is to acknowledge that it's not just abortion that's on the line, but we've seen attacks on IVF, we've seen attacks on contraception. So really trying to encompass reproductive freedom in general to include those other things that are on the line, which for our audience kind of resonate with them a lot because they know likely someone who has struggled with fertility or used contraceptives or has, suffered a miscarriage. So it really makes it very real for them.
Okay, that was great. Thank you. Now, Andrea, would you recommend, I'm sure you're going to say both to this, but who knows? Would you recommend that the folks on the call donate or write postcards? Many of us may be from California and other blue states, the person said.
Well, number one, I love the time or treasure question. What we've found is, again, we are not working with voters where they are being inundated with information. We are working with voters where our postcard may be the only thing they get, which is why we've made a point of making them beautiful and we handwrite them to really get the voters' attention. So we have literally millions more addresses that we can add. I would love for people to postcard, and the voters are not worried about, did these postcards come from the state I live in, or did they come from another state? That's not a problem. So whichever one or both, we would absolutely love. Our democracy centers are sending postcards, and the democracy centers, because they're in low-income communities, generally struggle to pay for postage. So if you like the postcard concept, what you can do is you can donate, and then we can help provide postage so that local people can write the cards. But we've been doing this since 2019, and we've learned people are not studying the postmark and going, well, it's not a local postcard, so I'm not going to pay attention to what it said.
And I'll just tag on to that question. How much increased turnout do postcards generate in voters with a poor voting history? I think you'd said up to 3% before, but I'm not sure if that was correct.
Yes, it can be up to 3%. We postcarded in Petersburg, Virginia, back in 2021, when people weren't really willing to knock on doors in Petersburg. They were scared of it. And what we found is, for a lot of Black voters, a lot of voters, period, we don't have phone numbers. So if you're not going to knock on the door and you don't have a phone number, but you do have an address, a postcard is a reasonable way to contact those voters. In 2021, the Georgia NAACP did a survey of 2,000 Black voters in Atlanta who did not vote in at that time, what was the most famous election? And the three top reasons they gave for not voting: number one, I didn't know where to vote; number two, I couldn't get there; and a very distant third, I didn't like any of the candidates. So for voters in low-income areas and rural areas where no one's knocking on the door, that postcard says, here's the phone number of your registrar. If you need to find out about voting, you can call your registrar. Everybody's got a phone, or at least they know somebody with a phone. And then in many of the states, especially if the income is very low, we try to either partner with someone that provides free rides to the polls if we don't provide free rides ourselves. So we make sure the voters can get there.
Okay, thank you. Do I have time for another quick one or no?
Yeah,
Okay.
one more quick question, Jessica. That'd be
Okay,
great.
I'm going to send this one to Ariel. I was going to ask you both, but maybe we can stay on later if people want to. But the economy, how do we best message about the economy, Ariel? Or how are you guys tackling that?
Yeah, that is the big issue. So I think what's most important is one, just making it very clear what the role of the government has been in that, and really illustrating and making it very tangible for folks. So illustrating very concrete examples of how the government has helped the economy. So for example, the child tax credit is something that, helps families be able to afford childcare. So you have to make it very, very tangible for them. I am also going to link our economy page. We have all of our messaging insights that are publicly available, because I could go on about this, but please feel free to take a look at that and reach out if you want a deeper dive.
We love the child care tax credit, and 90% of the people we spoke with about it had no idea that it existed. So that was great. We also, in low-income communities, the big need and the big desire is good paying jobs. In rural communities, the factories are closed, the jobs went away decades ago. That means young people, once they graduate high school, leave and go somewhere else where they can work. So the notion that there could be a way to bring good paying jobs back into their community is very, very important to folks.
All right, Brett, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Jessica. And thank you to our panel for so much useful information. It is really moving that you all are doing such incredible work. And I hope that everybody on the call feels that you are able to help that work. I know I am. We'll do that also. Liz, just one last time, let's put in the chat donation links for our panelist organizations. And also, while Liz is doing that, I'd like to invite all of you to our next How We Win a Vote, How We Win with conservation voters. Our speaker next week will be Jean Karpinski, who is executive director of the League of Conservation Voters. That's probably going to be a very popular event. I encourage all of you to be there. And Liz, that's on Wednesday, is that right? Week from today, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Jessica, as always, will be there with yet another adjective from me describing her. For those of you who've come to all the events, I have a different adjective to describe Jessica every time. So thank you again, everybody. This is the end of our event. For our panelists only, I invite you to join me in the breakout room for a final debriefing. And again, everybody, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. And I hope to see you next week for How We Win with Conservation Voters. Bye-bye.